Hello again everyone, Ken from Whittling Woods back again with another whittling wood carving tutorial. Today we're going to take this 1.5" piece of basswood and we're going to whittle a couple eyes. Beginner eyes, I guess you could call it. They're pretty simplified and I think most beginners can handle what we're going to whittle today. So if you're interested in seeing how I go about carving the eye, a simplified version of the eye, which you can use in small figures or wood spirits. In fact, I did a video on a wood spirit last weekend. I'll have the link over here for you, which I basically use the same style eye, so you can kind of see it in a figure. But we're going to use this piece of basswood. Like I said, it's 1.5" square. We're going to use these two knives here from North Bay Forge. You can use a medium-sized knife. I just happen to have these two here ready to go and all sharpened up. I was going to use knives that my good buddy Black Bart, aka Mark, had sent me recently, but I did not get a chance, unfortunately, this week to sharpen them up. So maybe next week we'll put those knives on display. But anyway, I want to kind of show you what we're going to be whittling today. This is the final product here. It's not a tutorial on the whittling the face here. You can see it doesn't even have a mouth, but I carve it in situ. I want you to see, rather than just me showing you on a piece of wood how to carve an eye. I think you need to see it in situ. You need to really understand how it fits in with the face, the nose, and everything else. So what we're going to do today is just do a quick whittle of a basic nose, and then do the eyes and the eyebrows. The rest of the stuff is not important for this video, but just wanted to kind of give you a look at what this style eye looks like. So they're pretty easy to do. I don't find them that difficult to do, and I think most beginners can handle this. They're not overly detailed. There's much more detailed ways of whittling the eye, but this is a simplified version using just a whittling knife. Like I said, you could use a medium-sized knife and do the whole whittle that way. But anyway, just kind of wanted to give you a quick look at what you're getting into today if you're interested in following along. So anyway, I'm going to get everything set up and I will be right back. Okay, I'm just going to basically bring down the edges. I'm looking to get to about sort of a 45-degree angle like that from that line to that line. So I just kind of come down here and, you know, I won't make you sit through the whole thing here, but that's all I'm doing. I'm just, again, kind of going from line to line. You can see from the top view I did that. All right. Now the first cut I like to make, and again, if you're looking at, if this was a head here, from the top of the head to the bottom of the head, I would kind of start my eyes, maybe if that's the halfway mark, let's say right there, I'd kind of come slightly above the halfway mark. You know, I typically don't use a lot of measurements. Just, you know, I hate to get caught up with too many measurements. So again, take your halfway mark and go slightly above that. All right, and then I put kind of a cut, little stop cut right in the wood over there. Kind of cut up to that, and then an angle cut down to that. All right, and again, just continue that. What we're doing here is forming the two planes. This plane over here will be the nose, and the cheeks over here, and this will be the eye and eyebrow area up in here. So I like to just keep kind of coming in here and forming those planes. You can kind of see how I'm doing it here. And I'll typically, you know, at some point I'll take the forehead back a little bit. What we're trying to do is leave wood right above in here for where the eyebrows are going to be, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let's continue with this over here. I'm just going to take wood, trimming it down over here, keeping in mind that this area here we want to leave wood in here for where the nose would be. And like I said, this is not a tutorial on the whole face. I've done that before. You can check out my video lists, and I'll have some links for all that kind of stuff. This is really just the eyes. What I'm doing is getting planes ready. This plane and this plane over here for where the eyes are going to be. So I'm just kind of coming back around here and just taking out some wood. There you go. Kind of see from the side how I did that. And then we'll put the bottom of the nose. Let's say right about here. Again, the reason I'm doing this is because we need to establish it where the nose is, because we got to remove the wood on either side of it. So there you go. You can see it both sides. So basically in here, we can thin this out just a bit more. It's easier if you kind of come back in here and you take out a little wood on either side. It's less to remove when you form the edges of the nose. When I say that is we're going to come in here, we're going to put a line here and a line here, and then just remove this chunk of wood. So the less wood you have to remove in the process, it just makes it a little bit easier. So I kind of come in here with my knife and I remove wood up to that eye line as much as I possibly can. All right, I'll give you a look on the side over there. There you go. You're going to kind of keep these planes in here, not flat, but keep your knife at an angle. I'll show you from the top over here if I can. You can kind of see, because eventually these will be eyes. Alrighty. Now what I'll do here is draw in a couple lines for the sides of the nose and where the eyes went in. Now I'm using a Sharpie. I don't typically recommend doing that. I'd recommend you use some type of pencil, but in order for it to show up a little bit on the video, we'll use a Sharpie. So I'm going to kind of come in here and just mark a little line over there for one side of the nose, and then equidistant over here for the other side of the nose. Kind of like that. And don't worry if it's not completely symmetrical, because rarely our noses are, especially if you're whittling older characters. They may have had their nose broke a few times. But again, the reason we're doing that is because right in here, this area in here and over here will eventually be part of the eye. So what we want to do now is we're going to put a stop cut here and a stop cut here, and just basically take out the wood that I'm marking off over here. Alright, so we're going to deepen this area in here, keeping the plane at the same angle. You can kind of see coming down that way. So what we'll do is we'll put a stop cut in here, we'll put our knives right deep into the wood, right up where the eye and the nose kind of come together. Go deep in there and kind of bring it right down. Put a little stop cut in there like so. And then kind of come on the top, again keeping your knife at that angle, and then put a little stop cut in there as well. It's going to be sort of at an angle. You can kind of say, whoop, there you go. And then put a little stop cut in there like so, just like that. And then we come back in underneath, and we're just removing this chunk of wood, and we're just going to come up here and remove that little chunk of wood in there. Alright, you kind of see from that side. Once I get the bulk of it removed, I like to go a little bit deeper. I'd come in here and I just kind of deepen that just a bit more. Kind of see. So right in here, the deepest part on your face is right in this area. I just want to remove some wood over there, like so. And then what I typically would do is I'd come back in here and I would just round off the nose area by taking that cut up and just rounding that off. But again, this is not a video on the nose, but there you go. So now we have established a nice flat plane in here for where we can do the nose, or excuse me, where we can do the eye. And I'm going to take out the wood the same way on the other side. I'll be right back after I'm done. You can see I removed wood on both sides. And now what I like to do is I just kind of come in here and I'm going to remove a little triangle of wood. So I'm going to put my knife right at that plane over there where all those planes come together. Just going to deepen that a little bit more on both sides. So I'm going to put a cut there and basically down in here as well. Kind of see where I'm going. And then there's a little triangle of wood. Just kind of take that little wood out over there. Just deepen that area as much as you can. All right. That's it. Right in here, you can kind of, I don't know if you can see from the shadow, see how that little section of wood. And the same thing over here. Just going to do that and deepen that. Just come in there. Trying to keep it under the camera here. And just, like I said, create a little depth in that section over there. All right, you can kind of see that. Maybe trying to get the shadowing in there correct. And that's basically going to be the deep spot in your face over there, right where your eye and your nose and your cheeks and all that kind of come together. Now the important thing to keep in mind is this plane over here, or this line over here, and this line over here should be, you should try to keep them pretty much the same. If they're not, let's try to correct that. I think this one's a little bit further up, so I'm going to go a little bit, just remove a little bit more wood in there. Okay. We want to just make sure that we're good on both of those. All right, there you go. Now what I typically like is, let's start just kind of figuring out where we want our brow line to be. And what I like to typically do is, I want to kind of come up here and round this over a bit. So right about here, you can kind of, I just drew it in. What I kind of come in here and do is I'll just start rounding that over just a bit. I leave wood in here where that line is because I eventually want to turn that into an eyebrow. You can kind of see from the side. This plane in here for the forehead and your nose kind of are somewhat similar. Get the top of your nose shaped as much as you like before you start doing the eye. Now, for the eye itself. Hopefully you hung in there this far. What I like to do is I'll put a line. Again, I'm using a Sharpie only so it shows up better. I'll put a line from not all the way down into that corner, but I'm going to kind of show you right over here. I'll just put a line going up from there, and then I got to flip it around to do this. I'm going to come in over here and do the same thing. There's one side, and then we're going to kind of come down in here and bring that side down, like so. So you got a little triangle over there, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. Bring that side down. And hopefully if you drew them correctly, they're pretty similar. Now the reason I wouldn't recommend using a Sharpie is because, well, it may not all, it kind of absorbs into the wood, so it may be there permanently. So now you can see this is where our eyeballs are going to be. So what we're going to do is remove some wood on either side of that. So what I like to do is come in here with a slightly smaller knife. If you have a medium-sized knife, you could do the same thing. And I'll make a couple cuts in here. We're going to come in, the first cut we'll make is right in here. I'm going to try to just do this under the camera, so it might be in an odd angle, but there you go. You kind of see where my knife is. And I'm just going to come in here, and I go in a little bit with my knife. All right. I might have to come back on the top and deepen that. And then basically we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to kind of come down. We're creating stop cuts. We're going to come down along that line. Not too deep. Like that. And then I'm going to use my knee for support here. I'm going to come back in here on the top and just remove a little of that wood, just to expose that a little bit further, that little triangle a little bit further. And if it takes a couple passes, that's okay. No one's counting. And then I flip it around, and I come back, and I do the same thing on this side. All right. So basically, we expose a little triangular piece of wood over here. And then I just nip off the top of it. Kind of like so. I'm going to try to clean up that pen mark if I can. There you go. So we just left a little bit of what kind of looks like a bit of an eye now. And then let's see from the side over here. So basically what we have here is where the eyeball will be, and this is like kind of the eyelid area. So in one shot we kind of did both of them. And you can kind of come in here if you want. You can deepen that. I'm looking at it and thinking, man, maybe it should be a little bit deeper. There you go. Cut shape from that side too. All right. What I typically like to do then is I come back in here and I sort of look at this as not a flat plane in here where my knife is, not as a flat plane, but sort of round it. So what I want to do is I come back in here and I just kind of shave off a little bit of wood on that side, and then maybe come around here and shave off a little bit of wood on that side as well, just to kind of round it out a bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. Again, these are very simplified eyes. So there you go. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. You come in here with a knife and go straight down to the nose. And then I'll flip it around and I'll come again in the wood straight up. Then we're going to come back, remove a little bit of wood on the top, over there, and then come back on this side and remove a little bit of wood on the top over there. Again, leaving a little bit of a triangle exposed. Come back in. Let's nip off the top. Top of that triangle. And as soon as I get that out there you go. I'm just going to again come back in here and just remove a little bit of that black marker. So it's kind of distracting looking at it. And we're going to come back in and do the same thing. We're going to come under here and just round that flat plane off just a little bit more by taking a little bit off in here and then maybe a little bit off over here. All right. And again, I have this little bit of black in there that I want to get out because it is very distracting looking at it. There you go. We basically have two very simple eyes that we just kind of, at least wood that we left in place over there. Now, you could kind of call it good right there and not really have to do anything else, but if you want, you can put a little bit of bagginess under the eye. And again, I'm just going to put a line, sort of like we did on top. We're just going to put a line down over here. The lower lid, eye bag, and then kind of come back over here. Same kind of idea, little triangle. Two little triangles under there. Same idea then. We come back in here with our knife. We go on those little lines. I put a stop cut in there. Just kind of come in there. Little stop cut. And then you can put another little stop cut. Again, this probably won't be the way I'd be holding it, but in order to show you the right angle, and put a stop cut basically over in here, leading up to the bottom of the eye. And then we're just going to take away a little bit of wood underneath that, just to carefully cut up to that on both sides. Kind of see, and then the same thing, I just kind of nip that off a little bit. So you create just a little bit of a bag, lower eyelid, whatever you want to call it. Like so. Very, very simple, very easy to, these are, you know, look, again, we're cutting triangles into the wood and just rounding them off to form something that looks passable as an eye. Again, it's a great little, you know, beginner type exercise, I think. And you get yourself an eye without worrying too much about a whole heck of a lot of detail. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing, the bag on the other eye, but you saw me do it on this one. You don't need to see that again. Let me finish that up. I'll be right back. So we got our basic eyes in there. Now I just kind of come back in here and I start forming an eyebrow. So I'm just going to keep, like I said, curving it around like so. And then I'll flip it here. I'll put a little line right in the center, a little stop cut right in the center here. And I'll cut on either side of that, like so. Just take out that little triangle in the middle there. This is a separation of the eyebrows. Right down to where the nose is. Like so. As you come back in here. Like, again, I can kind of consider this all part of the eye, so that's why I'm doing it. You know, you typically don't do an eye without an eyebrow, right? That's why I said in situ. So there you go. And then I kind of come back in here, and I just put a few stop cuts just to form a bit of the eyebrow area. And you can make this as thin or as chunky as you want. See how we're shaping that around there, coming from the side. So we're getting a basic, like I said, these are basic eyes that you can do if you're doing wood spirits, if you're doing little figures. You know, they're not overly complex. They're not, definitely easy for, I think, most people who are getting into whittling to handle. There's enough detail. Without being, you know, again, overly complicated to do. And I'll just do the same thing on this side, but I won't make you sit through that because you saw me shape that. So let me finish this up, and I'll be right back. So with that, we have a basic eye complete. Not all that complicated. Didn't take too long to do. I think it'll allow you to, you know, if you're struggling a little bit with putting eyes in your figures, then try this method out. You know, again, there's definitely more detailed ways you can go about it. I'm not going to, you know, pretend that this is the be all and end all, but you know what? I use it kind of quite a bit because I think it looks good, and you can try it out too. What I'd like to do here is just kind of round over a little bit over here where the temples are, and then I taper the eyebrow area into the you know, side of the face over there. And maybe I'll come back in here and make small adjustments to the eyebrows as needed. You can kind of come down over here, right at the end. Let me grab my smaller knife. Right on the end over here. Just kind of put a line right in there, like so. And then just kind of cut up and down to that, like so. You can see. And then maybe one right underneath that. Just gives a little indication of some crow's feet right on the corner of the eye over there. If you want to add those in. Kind of like so. You can see from the side over there. If you want little bags, more bags under the eye, you can put, you can try another little line right in here, just lightly. Just add a little bit of a puffiness underneath there. And, this is, again, detailed. You don't have to add, but sometimes it looks good. And there you go. You can kind of just, like I said, just add a bit more bagginess under there if you want. The other thing that I think you might want to consider doing is some indications for some eyelashes over here. So I'm going to kind of continue on this side over here. I'll just put a little stop cut in, the little lines here, and I start to angle them slightly more outward as I work my way across it. Again, these are not, none of this is really necessary. I'm just gonna, again, all part of the eye, so I'm kind of just showing you some basic easy stuff you can kind of do. Just like so. And then I kind of come back in. Once I do that, I kind of come back in on the top and I just kind of separate those a little bit more up top. Kind of come over here. Gotta do from that angle. You can kind of see right in here. I usually notch these little bits out, so it looks like kind of somewhat separate hair strands in there. Stuff like that. You can kind of see how that's working its way around over there. Now just kind of go around your piece. If you see any areas that need a little bit of cleanup, just hit them now. Just go through and, like I said, I always mention about leaving the cleanup. You're always going to kind of come back and clean things up as you go there. But, this is just some ideas of what you can kind of think about adding or not adding to your figure. There you go. I'm just, let me kind of put the similar detail on the other side and I'll be right back. I just, finished the nose and the up just to make it look better. What I did here was I went in with with just a regular number 2 pencil, and I put I darkened the areas in here so it can kind of give you an idea. And then I also went right along that edge over there for a little bit of the eyelash area. You can kind of see. So you can see that they serve, like I said, pretty effective for basic eyes. You don't have to go crazy too much in the eyes. You can give them other crazy expressions in the mouth and the eyebrows and all that. But I think that's a pretty simple version of an eye that I think most people can handle. I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of detail on the way I do it. So I hope you found that helpful. That's it for me this week. I hope you all have a great Whittling week. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.